If you're making six figures and you still feel broke, you are not crazy. You're paying the American Dream tax. And here's something that's gonna shock you. If you were making $150,000 today, that gives you the same buying power as $40,000 did in 1980. But here's where it gets crazy. That house that your parents bought back then for $65,000, if it had followed normal inflation patterns, it would cost $185,000 today. Instead, that same house is going to cost you $430,000. And so, in my opinion, that's not inflation, that is theft. And those things that actually matter for building a middle-class life, they're costing you 2 to 12 times more than they actually should. And so in today's video, I'm exposing the hidden tax of the American dream that is destroying the middle class, and more importantly, what you can do to escape it before it's too late. What's up, everybody? I'm Rashida, and I'm your guide to smart money moves. I began my wealth building journey at 17, and I've grown my portfolio to 7 figures, but I did this all on a police officer's salary, so I know what it's like to stretch every single dollar. But even I was shocked when I discovered what I'm about to tell you, because there is a reason why people making $150,000 now feel poorer than their parents did making $40,000 back then. And it's not because you are bad with money. It's because the system changed the rules without telling anyone. And I'm going to show you exactly how they did it. So let me start out by showing you the biggest financial lie of our generation. Everyone loves to talk about inflation as if it affects everything equally, but it doesn't. Your $150,000 salary today has roughly the same purchasing power as $40,000 did back in 1980 for basic goods. So things like your food, gas, clothing, that part actually works out fine. Believe it or not, gas is actually 9% cheaper than it was back in 1973. But here is where they got you. The expenses that actually define the middle class, the ones you need to actually build wealth and stability, those costs exploded while your paycheck has stayed the same. So for instance, if you want to go out and buy a house, back in 1980, it took 3.5 years of your median income to buy the average home. But today, it's 6.5 years of the median income just to buy the average house in America. In 1977, a 4-year public college degree cost just over $8,000 total. And so that would be the same as $33,000 in today's money. But today, that same 4-year degree is going to cost you over $99,000. And so that means that you're paying 3 times as much as you should. And healthcare costs rose 121% since the year 2000, but general inflation is only up 86%. And I remember the moment this hit me. I was out house hunting making what I thought was good money and realizing that I needed to make 2 or maybe even 3 times what my parents made just to afford what they had. And that's when I realized that this wasn't some personal failure. This was systemic, and it has a name. I like to call this the American Dream Tax, and this is the most expensive tax that you've never heard of. And so let me show you exactly how much you are paying. So the education tax, we've already established that you're paying 3 times what it should cost. Now let's look at the child care tax. And if you have young children, I don't even have to tell you how much this has gotten off the chain. That cost has risen 263% since 1990, when the general inflation rate has only been 133%. So you are paying double what you should for childcare based on standard inflation rates. The healthcare tax, a 35% premium just to stay healthy. The housing tax is 2.5 times more than what you should be paying. And so when you add all of those things up, you are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars more than your parents did for the exact same middle-class lifestyle. But here's what no one is going to tell you. This wasn't an accident. And once you understand how this happened, you can take steps to beat it. Based on all of the research that I have done on this over the years, 3 things have helped to create the perfect storm. First and foremost, government policies flooded certain sectors with very easy money without fixing any of the supply problems. And so this is going to include things like federal student loans, housing subsidies, and healthcare expansion. And so as as a result, the more money that you had chasing these same things is going to result in much higher prices. That's just economics 101. The second thing that contributed to this is that essential services became monopolized over the decades. So for instance, healthcare consolidation. Now, I live in a major metropolitan area, and I can tell you that over the decades, we have fewer and fewer choices regarding a healthcare provider. There are only 3 hospital networks in this entire metro area and only one for children's healthcare. When you have fewer choices for consumers to pick from, guess what happens to pricing? The prices are going to rise because it's less competition. Other examples of this are going to be housing restrictions and education cartels. Have you noticed in your area where the smaller community colleges are being bought up by the large universities? Again, when you have less competition, it's going to equal higher prices. And so if you've noticed things like this happening where you live, let me know in the comment section. Let me know where you live and what's happening there. Now, the third cause of this American Dream tax is going to be globalization. Globalization made goods cheap for us, but it made services more expensive. And so while your electronics have gotten cheaper over the years, your kids' education has gotten astronomically more expensive. And so the result of that is that you now have a 2-tier economy where anything that builds wealth became a luxury item while entertainment has become cheap. And so they made it easy to buy stuff that actually keeps you poor and a hell of a lot more expensive to buy things that make you rich. And if what I'm sharing with you is making you angry or pissing you off a little bit, drop that angry face emoji down in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on this. Hit the like button while you're at it. All right, now that we're done huffing and puffing, enough gloom and doom, here is what you can do to help beat the American Dream tax. All right, first things first, this is for people who are struggling just to pay housing. You have to consider geographic arbitrage, all right? And let me explain what that is. You need to consider relocating to where the taxes are lowest, because that $150K is going to go 3 times further in Tennessee than it does in San Francisco. And you can consider working remotely if that is a possibility for you. Find markets where your skills pay well, but the cost to live there is relatively low. All right, now strategy number 2 is going to be the substitution game, okay? Now for every inflated expense that you have, you need to try to find a deflated alternative. And so for example, instead of you or your kids taking on hundreds of thousands of dollars in college debt, it makes a lot more sense to pursue skill-based certifications, because these jobs tend to have high demand, they pay really good money, and you don't have to start out your adult life drowning in debt. Instead of traditional childcare that is breaking the bank, why don't you consider a co-op? I knew several parents that teamed up to hire a caregiver for their kids, and they were saving thousands of dollars throughout the month because they were pooling their assets together, paying someone a livable wage while also saving money. And if your healthcare insurance premiums are through the roof because your employer is passing on so much of those costs to you as the employee, you might want to look into and consider an alternative like a healthcare sharing ministry, or just paying a healthcare provider directly, because they will often give you a massive discount on those services. And if housing is eating up the vast majority of your budget because you're living in an expensive housing market, look to move to an up-and-coming neighborhood. So you don't necessarily have to leave the state, but you can definitely find a more affordable place to live than being directly in a major metropolitan city. Now, before we get into our third strategy, let me tell you about something that could help you right now. In today's complex financial world, making smarter decisions with your money has never been more important. And that is why I've teamed up with Money.com, your trusted guide to financial clarity. Money.com's mission is super simple. It's to help you become financially smarter through their research-backed recommendations on everything from a high-yield savings account, which actually to help you grow your money, to speaking with a financial planner to help you take your strategy to the next level. Their expert team does a phenomenal job cutting through all the noise to bring you honest, actionable advice that actually works for real people and not just the pros. So be sure to check out my links in the description to see how money.com can help you transform your financial future, because when it comes to your money, we know on this channel that knowledge truly is power. All right, now let's get back to beating that American dream tax. All right, now this is important, so listen up. For every dollar that you don't spend on inflated expenses, that money needs to go into deflated assets. Because while inflation is costing 3 times more than it should, the stock market and global investments are more accessible than ever. And so here is a specific example of what I mean. If you can save the difference between what college should cost versus what college actually costs, that's going to be $30,000 per year for 4 years. And so I know you may be wondering, well, how can I do this? First of all, if your kid is looking at colleges, why don't you get them to do their first 2 years at a community college and then transfer over to a public school, okay? That is a huge trend that is going on right now because college is so unaffordable. And so if you were to hang on to your $30,000 each year for 4 years and invest that money instead, even with a below average market return in the stock market at 7% instead of the 10 that you were likely to get, you will have $480,000 accumulated for yourself before most people finish paying off their student loan debt. All right, now our next strategy is going to be all about stacking our skills, all right? Don't just earn a salary, okay? You need to build recession-proof skills that you can generate multiple streams of income with over time. Because the truth is, the wealthy don't just have jobs, they have value creation systems, and they are constantly trying to level up their skills to earn more income. Now let's talk about a mindset shift that can change everything for you. You need to stop trying to live the exact same way your parents did because they lived in a very different economic era, okay? So start thinking like someone who understands the new rules of the game, because your parents could literally have one person working, buy a house, send kids to college, and retire comfortably. That playbook is broken and it's so obvious. You need to focus on multiple streams of income instead of job security. You need to focus on accumulating assets instead of status symbols. You need to focus on building skills rather than attaining credentials. And you have to be more open to geographic flexibility over neighborhood loyalty. Because when I stopped trying to recreate my parents' middle-class life, I started building my own version and everything changed. Instead of buying the right house in the right neighborhood, I focused on buying assets that outpaced inflation and provide cash flow. Instead of pursuing more degrees that don't really return that investment to me, I invested in skills that can help me get paid immediately. And I implemented a 3-bucket system, all right? Bucket number 1 was to make sure that I had a 6-month emergency fund, and this is non-negotiable because this is going to be a safety net for any unexpected expenses and is going to help you preserve your ability to continue to invest. All right, now bucket number 2 is going to be my growth investment bucket. So 70% of any excess income that I get goes into my investment accounts. So this is going to be things like getting a raise. When you get a raise, you want to earmark 70% of that raise to your investments. This is how you are going to supercharge your wealth journey, okay? Things like a windfall. So if you get a lump sum of money for whatever reason, things like a tax return, things like cash gifts, or your side hustle income. If you can devote 70% of that excess income to assets, you are going to be so far ahead of the game. And any remaining excess income that I have is going to go into my 3rd bucket, all right? Now, my 3rd bucket is completely devoted to developing my skills and my business, because that is how I'm going to continue to level up, which is just going to make me more money. It just feeds on itself. And so no excess income is going to lifestyle inflation until buckets 2 and 3 are filled and preferably overflowing. So no new cars, no nicer apartments, no fancy clothes, no expensive handbags or overly extravagant vacations. Keep the lifestyle on lock until the buckets that will pay you money are overflowing. Now, to bring everything together, you need to hear the uncomfortable truth. The truth is that the old middle class is dead, but the new middle class, it's actually more powerful if you know what you're doing, because the old middle class followed this checklist: 1 job for 30 years, a company pension, house in the suburbs, kids go to college debt-free, retire at 65. Does any of that sound like that's what's going on today? I didn't think so. All right. And so here is the new middle class reality: 2 to 3 streams of income that you control. That means something outside of your actual job or career. You are your pension plan, meaning you must save for your own retirement. If you neglect to do this, you will be working until the day you die, because Social Security is not going to be enough for you to live on. And that is the reality of the situation. The next thing is multiple properties or strategic locations. All right. Your kids get skills first and worry about degrees second, and you retire when your assets work harder than you do. Look, your parents were able to trade their time for money in a very stable system, but you are going to have to trade value for money in a volatile system. And once you can accept that, you can win at the game. The new middle class, it ain't about having a white picket fence. It's about having options: financial options, location options, career options, because that is real wealth. If you like this video, drop a strong arm emoji down in that comment section. And if you're still here at this point in the video, make sure you check the link in the description, because I have a free tool for you, okay? This is the American Dream Tax Calculator, which can help you see exactly how much you are paying in the American Dream Tax, and it's going to give you plenty of recommendations to help you get out of that trap. All right, thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to check out my next video. Until next time, I'm Rashida, and I'm out.